Good morning and welcome to Moving Iron Podcast Market Rundown with Angie Setzer. Angie, how you doing this morning?
Good. How are you doing?
There's a stuff going on here, and there's never a lack of stuff going on, but there is a fair amount of stuff going on out there right now. When you start looking at weather and this record short that we've got everywhere across all the hedge funds and everybody else has really played a phenomenal number on the markets here. I think corn's down almost 30 cents in 2.5 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever it is. So it took a pretty quick dive. So talk about what you see happening there on the short position side, and then talk about what you see happening with these rains we're talking about. There's supposed to be a lot of rain this next couple of
Yeah,
days here.
yeah. It's definitely it's getting concerning, I guess you could say. And so my friend Karen Corrigan, have been joking back and forth all week about going when it's fit or going when you can get it done. And I always joke, I'm not an agronomist, but I do know that the market saw it, to where there was a planting window that took place in a lot of areas this week. Specifically the Western Corn Belt. You saw a lot on Twitter. There was some ongoing jokes about, 2-3 weeks ago, we weren't going to plant anything in Nebraska ever again. And then now you were seeing, Nebraska planters rolling and this, that, and the other thing. And, just some kind of ribbing of one another that was interesting to see, but it did have an influence. We can't say that social media has zero influence on what traders are thinking or which direction they're heading. You start to see it in, the market analysis stuff that we get at the end of the day. Social media is full of pictures of everyone planting, and it kind of goes back down to that whole fear of missing out, or the idea that if you see 10 guys planting on Twitter, then obviously everyone is. And that wasn't the case this week. We didn't have any wheels turn in Michigan. I'm pretty positive that most anyone and throughout, a significant area of Illinois, a good portion of Indiana and Ohio didn't turn a wheel. Your northern Corn Belt areas, your northern plains also didn't. But so we will see some planting pace on Monday. But the real thing that we're watching now is okay, that window is pretty well shut here for now until we get a new one, at least if the forecast holds steady. So right now the forecast for the 6 to 10 to 8 to 14 day window is that we're going to see much above normal precipitation with below normal temperatures in the northern belt, and maybe some above normal temperatures, but those have been pushed back. Instead of bulk of the southern Corn Belt, Iowa was split in half for quite some time this week with above normal temperatures to the south and below normal to the north. Now we're seeing that above normal temperature window kind of shift to the southeast. So the question really is, what are we looking at there, when it comes to progress? And most meteorologists and farmers are in agreement that probably not much. There's some heavy snow in the northern plains. We here in the Lansing area are looking at probably the fourth time that we will see over 3 inches of snow on record. So that doesn't happen a lot, where you get this 3-4 inches of snowfall. Obviously it's going to melt. I mean, that's not the issue at stake, but it's not going to do well for wheat. Wheat's already struggling. The last thing it needs is 31 degree lows and poor warmth and things like that. So I'm not saying that the lows will kill it, but they're definitely not going to help it. And I know last year for us here in Michigan, we had a really steady week of planting pace take place right ahead of a really cold, heavy rain.
Okay.
And every single person, pretty much, if not every single, the bulk of anyone that had corn planted ahead of this really cold, heavy rain had to replant. It did not work for it. And so that'll be something else we're watching. Just because we see this planting pace come off on Monday, maybe at a higher level, some of these areas that are going to be dealing with this really cold, heavy rain that they're forecasting for the weekend, may really struggle with what the stand and all of that noise looks like when we look at it here in another couple, 3 weeks. So I think weather's going to start to trump everything, but we've got to see, what the shorts decide to do. Do they carry that short position into month end. Tuesday is the end of the month. We're in a roll period, delivery period. Being a short is not the bad place to be going into delivery. You don't have to really worry too much about that. You just have to roll into a carry if you have a short position on. So, we're not really sure what the funds are going to do, but eventually there's going to be some sort of catalyst to kind of flip that position. And at this point, it looks like weather might be the one, at least when it comes to corn.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the short position they're in, and there's nothing out there that's saying they should get out of that short position.
No.
Every report that comes out just says, "Great guys are doing great. Keep it up.
Yeah.
Don't get out because you're doing the exactly right thing." So when these reports come out, USDA is not doing any favors to anybody. I mean, they're just. I mean, granted, they're reporting stuff and they're not like on the side of anyone, but it's one of those things where we could sure use a positive report someplace down the road.
Yeah, we could. And but the $1 million question right now that I have anyway, is that the cash movement, the pipeline and all of that tends to reconcile true supply and demand. So if you look at some of the conversations that we've had this week on Twitter with some of the folks out west, Iowa and Nebraska specifically, there's a Nebraska buyer for an ethanol plant that is saying that this is the slowest pace they've seen on record for farmer sales. They're just not moving. I know a certain co-op in north central Iowa, we'll say, has handled about 10% of a year ago's handling. And a friend of mine that is a broker that oversees a lot of elevators, commercials, things of that nature, says right now that farmer selling is about 47% of last year and 54% of the 2-year average. So what does that mean? And so the kind of conversation or the indication on Twitter is, well, the farmer's screwed, or the farmer has generated this much income that he or she is able to survive. They've went out and got loans and the MFP payment helped and they sold $10 beans. But in the next breath, they talk about how the farmer didn't sell $10 beans.
Right.
And so we go back and forth. And, to me, I'm beginning to wonder, and this, I'm not stating it as fact. It is something that's in the back of my mind right now. Could the USDA be overestimating what the farmer has on hand? Could the USDA be overestimating what the commercial has on hand? And a lot of people are saying it's logistical hiccups that are causing the inability to move. Folks in South Dakota, their roads are shot right now. It's springtime, blah, blah, blah. Heavy rains, things like that. Maybe that's the case. But where I come from, if the farmer's not selling, you're seeing push take place to commercials. So if the ethanol plant needs to buy grain, they're buying grain from the elevator. And at this point, you would say, okay, the commercial long is indicating that the elevators are selling, but the basis is not indicating that the elevators are selling. So there's some really, it's interesting. And I had someone come out and say, well, according to the USDA, I'm like, oh, really? No crap. We did see the USDA number. We saw the trade result afterwards. The USDA has been wrong. I'm not saying that that's the case right now, but I always point to farmers that cash reconciles actual supply and demand. And right now the cash is saying that the grain's not moving like it should. Now, why is that? Is there less there? Is it the farmer is more flush with cash? Is he tapping into his equity? Blah, blah, blah. I don't know. But we'll see. We'll learn more about what's taking place here over the next 3 months, especially if we get a pop in the futures and really definitely see that, that farmer movement start to go. But it's an interesting thing that's kind of forming and will have implications on what takes place when the speculators do exit their position. So that's the problem right now that they're talking about, is if the speculators exit, then the commercials will be selling and your net result is still kind of zero. You move the pendulum maybe up, but it's not as exciting or whatever as some folks are anticipating. But we'll know in 3 months. So I guess stay tuned.
Yeah. Well, one thing about the funds, they've been short for a really long time. They've been in that short position for a very, very long time. And right now, if you start figuring basis and what it costs everything and stuff like that, you're too far away from just straight up $3 corn. It's that the elevator. You're really close to that. And I'm not saying that it couldn't go lower, but it can't go much lower, right? So sooner or later, they're going to have to start figuring that it's just going to happen. So they're going to have to exit their short positions, not because of necessarily because of a rally, but because they may have hit the bottom, and then it bottomed out. Now they got to figure out how they're going to go back up. So
well, eventually, what looks like a good sell signal turns into a buy signal, right? I mean, eventually, someone's going to step in with enough money to say, "Why are we doing this?" And so it's also really interesting to see China is up big on their corn imports. If you go back into I just found 6 billion bushel November 1st. Right. So, they're up big on imports, but they just had 6 billion bushels. 6 billion, and that's just carry out. That's not, I mean, so there's a lot of things that are taking place in this market structure right now that, and you see it. I always tell my growers that you will always see every single bearish headline that can be put in place released when the market's at its low. Everyone will reinforce these bearish ideas. That's what we're hearing right now with wheat. Well, the hard red wheat crop's going to be 850 million bushel. It's just going to be this giant crop, and the Russian crop's going to be 84 million metric ton. And you have all these people that come out, and when you're in a bearish market structure, even these superfluous ideas of production are embraced. Like, well, it's reality, right? Who cares if it's only April and acreage is down significantly and all of these things? Conditions indicate that hard red wheat should be ginormous, and this Russian trader says that their crop's going to be even bigger, and blah, blah, blah. And so everyone ignores the people that are actually in Russia saying 80 million, maybe 77, probably more like it. I just saw a friend of mine say the Russian crop's not going to be any bigger than 17. So, I mean, is it going to be large? Probably, but that crop's made in May and June out there. They're very similar to the Michigan harvest structure. And soft red wheat here in Michigan's being torn up every day. Well, it would be torn up if they could get into it. More likely, it's just being round up, and then we're waiting to see if we can get in and just get under kind of deal. So there's a lot of things that I'm starting to see, and that's typically what tends to happen is a shift in trade direction starts with whispers. I always say it looks like, when you start boiling a pot of water, you just get the little tiny bubbles on the bottom, and then it gets into a full boil. Yep. We're at little tiny bubble mode. Yeah. So it's not boiling. You're not going to pour your macaroni in at this point in time. You're going to continue to hear about why you shouldn't pour your macaroni in. Eventually it will be, but now is the time to really kind of focus on where you would want to sell and kind of recognize that a 10% return or a 10% gain back tends to be a good number to be aware of and be aggressive on. And, so that put us into that 380 front month, 390 on the front month sort of core number. It put us up into that 405, 410. I'm not saying that's the high, but I'm saying you should be selling numbers at that level, and we'll have those opportunities. I feel pretty confident in seeing that, here over the next 4 to 5 weeks. Yeah.
Well, lots of stuff going on, Angie. Pay attention to the markets and know when to jump and when to stay. So if folks wanted to pick your brain a little bit or get some advice on what they should be doing, how would they do that, Angie?
You can find me on Twitter at Goddess of Grain, or you can email me at asetzer@citizenselevator.com.
Right on. All right. Well, have a good day, and we'll talk to you again next week.